Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian, and we are back with another Pokemon Unite video. I know it's been a while since my last few videos. I'm sorry. I just been very busy with work and life this last week or so. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. It's just I've just been really busy. I've had a bunch of ideas written down that I've been wanting to get out, and I just haven't been able to work on them until now. So as you can tell from the title and thumbnail of this video, today I want to talk about what I think are the biggest pros and cons between playing on Switch versus playing on mobile, and which one I think is better to play on right now. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and go here. So right now I'm actually sharing my mobile screen to my computer right now, so you guys are able to see it, and so you can actually like see my finger presses and stuff on the screen. I'm playing on my phone right now. You can even see it right here. Yep. So we'll go ahead and cover what I think are the pros and cons of playing on mobile, which should help also kind of reflect to the pros and cons of playing on Switch. So the biggest pros that I think about playing on mobile right now is the fact that the UI in the game as a whole is super smooth. It's super smooth and responsive. Okay, which kind of makes sense. The game was originally on beta on mobile in the first place. I figured it was kind of meant for mobile in the first place, so it kind of makes sense. Whenever I press something, it's just super quick and responsive. So a lot of times when I'm playing games against other people, it feels like it's actually faster than when you get to like the Pokemon selection screen, for example, like right here, and you're picking Pokemon with the rest of your team. Oftentimes it feels like I get to the Pokemon selection screen faster than like people on Switch a lot of times. So I can actually pick my Pokemon quicker too, which may or may not be a plus, you know, depending on whether or not you like playing certain Pokemon that are more popular than others. I'm a Mr. Mime main. No one really picks Mr. Mime, so I don't have to worry about that. But let's say you're a Zeraora main or something like that, or a Cinderace, Greninja, or you know, these popular type of Pokemon that a lot of people like to play. Chances are that your main often gets picked before you can pick it. So maybe mobile would be worth considering for that aspect. Now, it is worth noting, of course, that how good mobile is for you is completely dependent on your physical hardware device for mobile. How good your phone is, basically, in other words. So if you don't have a very good phone, maybe it's like, you know, 10 years old or something. You're probably less concerned about whether or not you can get this type of quality on mobile, and you're probably more concerned whether or not you can even play Pokemon Unite on mobile in the first place. But assuming that you're playing on a somewhat newer phone, the UI seems to be pretty good and pretty responsive, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So I'm just going to go ahead and go in the practice range real quick and just kind of show off how smooth the game feels while playing. One of the biggest things you'll notice is that I have a constant 60 FPS while playing, and it's worth noting I have one of the newer, I think it's iPhone, is it 12? I think it's 12 Pro Max. So it's one of the newer iPhones. I think it's the one that just came out last year. Was it this year or last year? It was one, I think it was this year, the one that came out this year. All right, go practice area. Let's get some random person. There we go. You see how fast this is? Like, that's crazy fast. My Switch would take like 2 or 3 times as long to load up like any sort of battle arena. Like, the speed at which things load is just crazy faster. It really does like seem insane. So anyways, let me look at this. Okay, so like you can see at the top right hand of the screen, it shows my FPS as well as like my connection and my battery life at the moment. All right, and it's just super smooth. Never once have I've been playing on mobile for quite a while now, and not once have I seen it dip below 60. It's just a constant 60 FPS, and that honestly makes a difference in my opinion. If you play a lot of competitive games like I do, having a good constant frame rate really is a big deal in a lot of situations, because I don't know about you guys, but at least for me, I feel like every time it dips, it's always in a very important moment where it just screws me up, because now it's like I don't know what the heck just happened. On that note too, one of the biggest things that I noticed about the Switch that I really hated, that I don't really notice as much on mobile, is the fact that my connection seems stable. Okay. For reference, I'm using Mint Mobile as my carrier service for my phone. And at least for me, I don't notice any issues with my connection. Okay. Also depends on your Wi-Fi too, how good your Wi-Fi is. But at least compared to my Switch, every once in a while I get these just random lag spikes. Okay, where I'll just be walking off in the distance or something with like I just lose control of my character out of nowhere, and that happens way less often on mobile. Okay, I rarely see that happen. So far we already have two really good pros for mobile, which is really good UI. It's just depending on what phone version you have too, the game is just faster. It's more responsive and faster. Everything just loads faster, and like it's just more responsive. On top of your connection is probably going to be a lot better too compared to Switch, just because, you know, Nintendo doesn't exactly have the greatest servers in the world. With that in mind, okay, one of the biggest things that I want to talk about is how good like things like aiming and stuff is in this game. Okay, which is partially why I picked Mr. Mime for this practice session, because I think Mr. Mime is probably one of the more aim intensive Pokemon in the game, partially because of the barrier, because of how precise you have to be with the barrier. As you can see right here, I have super precise control over my barrier placements. Like you can see it's in relation to my thumb, so like it's a lot more intuitive in terms of where I can place my barrier compared to on Switch. Sometimes the barrier just pops up in a spot that you didn't expect it to pop up or didn't want it to pop up. So like for example on Switch, okay, a lot of times even if I change all my settings, it's like my barrier it has a completely different setting of its own that I can't toggle. So like on Switch, for example, if I were to hold down my barrier or light screen option, it would automatically pop up on the A palm. Okay, right there. However, on mobile, I don't have to worry about that as much because I have super precise control over all of it. At a moment's notice, I could be like, whoops, I didn't mean to use that. At any given moment, I could just do it as accurately as I want to instantly. Whereas on mobile, because the fact it goes all over the place and you're using a stick, a joystick, it can be a little bit slower to actually get the barrier to the spot that you want it to, especially if it ends up like behind you, like it does right there, and you want it to get all the way in front of you at a moment's notice. You can't really get it at a moment's notice in front of you on Switch nearly as fast as you could on mobile. Like you saw right here, like I can flick it to the front immediately. You can't really do it that fast on Switch. So just aiming in general is just superb on mobile. Now, this is where we get into the biggest downsides about mobile, and which is probably going to be the biggest factors in where you could have an argument for wanting to stay on Switch instead of mobile. However, I will also say that these factors are somewhat dependent on what type of Pokemon that you play. Okay. So let's talk about the factors first before we get into the actual Pokemon. One of the biggest things is that one of the biggest downsides is the fact that while aiming, one of the biggest things I noticed was that you can't aim downwards nearly as well, purely because of the button placement on your screen. So you can see, you can see on the screen right now, there's like where the game like video ends, there's like that black line. That black line isn't part of my screen. That's literally the edge of my phone, where the black line starts at the bottom of the screen and the top of the screen too. Those are the edges of my phone. All right. So if I were to aim, for example, let's use Confusion here. Actually, Confusion not a good example. Let's use Light Screen. That'll actually show my thumb. All right. You can see where my thumb's placed on the right side, and you can also see where it's placed in relation to the barrier. Okay. All right, this is my thumb all the way at the top of the aiming circle. If I were to go downwards, right, it's fine. That top one's fine. It's the bottom button, the bottom ability that you can't aim well with because it's right next to the edge of the screen. All right, so you can see right here, if you take a look at my thumb placement, where at the bottom right, you can see my thumb can't reach all the way downwards because it's hitting the edge of the screen. But if I point it all to the right, you can see my thumb go all the way to the right and all the way to the left and all the way to the top. But I can't reach all the way to the bottom because the edge of my screen gets in the way. So that's probably one of the biggest downsides as of right now about mobile, is the fact that their button layout is just wonky. If they literally just raise the button layout like half a centimeter upwards and maybe to the right a little bit, so it can take up a little bit more of the space on the right hand side, aiming would be fine. You wouldn't have an issue with that. But for aim intensive Pokemon like Mr. Mime, for example, that's kind of a big deal. It's kind of annoying to have your finger hit the edge of your phone sometimes. So I don't like that. That's just me personally. The other big thing that I think might dissuade you from wanting to play on mobile too is simply the fact that because you have so many buttons on the right hand side of the screen, sometimes you can't notice enemies coming, especially when the upgraded versions of an ability pop up like it did before. Sometimes because of the button placements, not only can you not see enemies coming sometimes, especially when the upgradable versions of the moves pop up, but you also can't see where you're aiming sometimes too. And again, that does depend on how big like the size of your phone is. That's going to vary from person to person. But those are probably the two most notable things I noticed about the aiming. So you see how right now, like, you can select which moves you have. That's the same type of layout that like having upgradable versions of your abilities has. So like, let me just level up real quick. So when it gets like this and your upgradable moves start popping up, they start covering more of the screen, which sometimes can make it difficult to see what's happening, especially if you have a smaller phone than I do, because I have a Max Pro iPhone, so my screen size is bigger than like the average iPhone. So it's not as bad for me, but for smaller phones, that's probably like a big deal because that's a good portion of your screen. So those are probably the two biggest downsides of playing on mobile right now. The third downside, which can potentially be an upside in the future, which I'm assuming they would add support to it later on, is that as of right now, there is currently no controller support for the mobile version of the game, which is unfortunate because honestly, the moment that they release controller support for mobile is the moment where all those downsides I just listed go away. All right. If you have a controller, you don't have to worry about buttons being on your screen because, well, you can just press on your controller. They're not covering your screen really anymore. Maybe they might still cover a little bit like it does on Switch, but it's not going to be as big or, you know, take up as much of the screen as it does currently. On top of the fact that you can actually aim properly, especially downwards, because you don't have to worry about your thumb hitting the edge of the screen. You can actually aim downwards properly because you're using the joystick now on your controller. It just gives a lot more. You basically get all the upsides. Once they release controller support for the game, you get all the upsides of mobile while having none of the downsides that I currently listed, as well as having none of the downsides about playing on the Switch, which I would probably say all the downsides about playing on Switch are all the upsides about playing on mobile. That's kind of the big thing. So the moment that they release controller support for mobile is the moment I would say just 100% just play on mobile. Okay, there's literally no reason to play on Switch anymore the moment controller support comes out. I know for me personally, using a controller the moment the support comes out, just because of the fact that I have one of these like attachable controllers to my phone, which are honestly probably one of the best things that I love about playing games on my iPhone now. I play games like Genshin Impact using this thing, and it's an absolute joy to play. It's like a little mini Switch that you can just have on the go, more on the go than the Nintendo Switch. I don't necessarily take my Switch with me everywhere, but I take my phone with everywhere with me. And having this little attachable controller, I could show you guys, for example, is so much more enjoyable to play. So like, for example, I attach it and now I have like, this is my phone. I have like my own little mini Switch now, essentially. And if they had controller support, I could just play mobile Unite like this, and like that would just be so much better. I could have the constant frame rate, the good internet connection. Okay, I can still aim pretty accurately. The game is nice and smooth and responsive. it's just everything that I want. So anyways, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Those are pretty much the biggest upsides and downsides about mobile as of right now compared to Switch. In terms of particular Pokemon, if you're not really playing an aim-intensive Pokemon, like a very simple Pokemon, then you don't have to worry about some of these downsides just because of the fact that, well, you don't have to worry about your thumb hitting the edge of the screen because you're not really aiming too much. Or you don't have to worry about the buttons getting in the way as much because, well, you don't have to aim as much. So depending on your Pokemon, this might be okay, not as big of a deal. But if you're playing some like pretty aiming intensive Pokemon like Mr. Mime, for example, it can be kind of annoying to deal with, and you might just prefer playing on Switch. So take that as you will. Go and let me know what your thoughts are about playing on mobile in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your guys' opinions about it. Other than that, though, my name is Brian, and I will see you guys in the next Pokemon Unite video. Peace.